Hello, David Clarke here from DVC Training, and this video is all going to be about using the audio transcribing feature inside of Acon Audio to make subtitles with EDIUS 11. So what I've done here is I've done a little bit of audio and I'm going to transcribe that in Acon. Hello, it's David Clarke here from DVC Training, and So the first thing is to get it from EDIUS to Acon. If you have looked at a video on edius.net, you just right click and go open, and it opens up straight away in Acon. Oh, it didn't. And there is a reason for that, which I will explain later on in this video. If you want to skip to that, just look in the description for the chapter below about associating audio files with Acon. This is a WAV file, so I need to get that WAV file into Acon. If this was a video, I'd need to actually make a WAV file and put it into Acon. But I'm just going to take this file, which I know where it is on the hard drive, and can open it in Acon. So I'm just going to bring up Acon, go File and Open, and find the file. And here you can see I've got a nice, reasonably clean piece of audio. Now you may never have used Acon before, but it is like a lot of audio programs. So if you've got an audio thingy up here, you've got a whole bunch of effects that you can use on it. And there's different layouts. So the normal layout is this one. So let's start off with that. What I want to do is get Acon to make text out of these words. To do that, all you have got to do is go out to Analysis, Add Captions Automatically, choose the language and click OK. And then wait for it to happen. I'll just scoot through the process of this. It's not a big file, it's only about a minute. And I'll tell you how long it took at the end of it. Whilst it's analysing, you can do other things. Obviously not with this particular file, but you can go on and do other things in Acon with other stuff. But there we are, it's done it. It took about a minute to do this minute's worth of file. And it split it up and put subtitles up here. If you want to start editing them, you need to get up the subtitle editor. Now you can just go up to View and go to Show or Hide Caption Editor. Or you can go to Factory Layouts and go to Caption Editing, which will bring up the same thing, but all laid out nicely down here. Now you can look at the actual subtitles. So there you are, first line. Hello, David Clarke here from DVC Training. And having looked through this, it's actually done a pretty good job of getting the subtitles right. A bit of audio so that I have something to transcribe inside of way I can actually show you things like how with this particular piece of audio that I made specifically for this tutorial, it actually done a very good job of getting everything right. Doesn't always do that, which is true of pretty much all transcribing programs out there. They don't get everything right all the time. So for example, let me load up this file. This is from the last video I uploaded, which is all about the ability to export multiple timelines out of Mink. And here it got more things wrong. It spelled EDIUS wrong. It does EDIUS wrong all the time. You might also notice here that it kind of does a sentence and changes halfway through a sentence. I'd love it if it was actually going around specific phrases. Again, it's a problem I do get in other programs, is that they'll only do so much. They kind of don't all see where a sentence starts and ends. And ideally for a subtitle, I'd like it to actually fit a particular phrase. But it's done it. I now need to do something with that subtitle. And of course, the big question is, what do you actually want to do with the subtitles? You know, a lot of people are used to subtitles on Netflix or on DVDs where you've got a little button and you can turn it on and off. Well, EDIUS's DVD writing doesn't do subtitles. So even if you can make them, you can't put them onto a DVD with EDIUS and having them something that turns on and off. If you want to make a file and give it to somebody with some subtitles that they can turn on and off, well, that's not something you can do with an MP4 file. They don't do that. You could burn them in, which is what a lot of people talk about with subtitles, actually take them and burn them in on screen, but then you can't turn them off. So I'll be explaining how you can do that, for example. But if you want to make a file that they can then go and play in something and turn the subtitles on and off, that's a bit harder. I'll do a separate video about that because you can make a thing called an MKV file where you can have different subtitles in it and people can turn them on and off. And you can play that back with most playback programs on a computer. But when they stick it onto a USB stick and stick it into a TV, may or may not play it, depends on the television. Most of my subtitles go on videos that go onto YouTube. Now with YouTube, you can upload subtitles and turn them on and off. What you have to do is to make a thing called an SRT file, which you can do straight away from the timeline here. Click on Export, change the type to something else. So you have a couple of SRT ones here. Give it a name, and it makes up a file that I can then shove up to YouTube. On YouTube, you just say subtitles, upload file, and it puts those in. They'll be exactly as they appear here. Now you're probably going to want to tweak them because there won't be everything right. For a start, it hasn't got my name correct. I'm Clarke with an E. Then there's this bit here. It's a bit small. Maybe I want to get rid of that, merge it with something else. But it could be as simple as transcribe it, export it, upload it to YouTube. As I write this, there is something that Acon does slightly wrong, which could mess up your subtitles. So I would definitely look out for this in the first place. And that's subtitles overlapping. So for example, let's go to this thing here. So I got a subtitle here that says, hello, it's David Clarke here again. And if you look at the time codes down here, I mean, having selected it here, it highlights it. That overlaps with the next one. I could tell it did that because just by looking at the full thing here, even with nothing highlighted, I can see an overlapping area here. Most subtitling programs don't like overlapping bits. So have a look through your clip and see if there's any subtitling bits. This one here, which was longer video that I last uploaded to YouTube, bit hard to see when you're zoomed out, but zoom in and you can see the overlapping bits. You got to fix those before you do anything. Pretty easy to fix them. Let's go back to this one here. Let me zoom into it. So I'm zooming in by grabbing the slidey bar here or just using the mouse wheel. So it's a bit like EDIUS. Stick the playhead where you want to zoom in and then just mouse wheel in and out and I can zoom into it. And I need to change the end of that one so it doesn't overlap with the next one. So, hello, it's David Clarke, which is at 29. Let's find it in the list. Here we are. Hello, it's David Clarke here again. I want to change that. Logically, you'd think you grab hold of the end and drag it. That doesn't work. It doesn't work because most of the time you don't want to change where your subtitles are, so it's locked to avoid you messing it up. So what I do is come down here, unlock the padlock, grab the end and move it so it doesn't overlap. Then I can just click the play button down here and it'll just play that looped region. Hello, it's David Clarke here again. Hello, it's David Clarke here again. And in fact, probably I should go a little bit further because there's probably again there. Hello, it's David Clarke here again. It should actually finish there, which means this one starts too early. So let's go to that one, unlock it, move it so it doesn't overlap, check it, starting again. Oh no, I wish I hadn't done that. Yep, that sorted those out and it's not overlapping. At the very least, sort that out because that will mess up everything. You'll end up with lines duplicated in whatever program you go to. So those are fairly easy to spot. Let's go through here. Oh, there's this one here. To transcribe inside of, where is it? Acon. Unlock it. Move it. Quick check. Transcribe inside of Acon to transcribe. Yep, and this one here, let's unlock that and just stop it overlapping. So at the very least, sort that out before you do anything. Then export it and use it. Now, if I wanted to use it to burn subtitles into EDIUS, again, I would export a caption file. You can do it through this, or you can go File, Export, Caption, and make sure I choose SRT and call it Subs 2, as opposed to Subs 1. Now I'm going to go back into EDIUS where I've got my transcription and I'm just going to load that into EDIUS. So let's just double click the bin, find the thing and bring it in. Subs 2. Then take it, throw it onto the timeline. Let's make it match the audio because obviously it should be the same length. And now you can see I have got some subtitles here. Hello, it's David Clarke here from DVC Training and I'm just recording this little bit of audio so that I have something to transcribe inside of Acon. And they're there, but obviously they're not very well formatted. Next thing I've got to do is format them. Double click on the subtitle and it actually opens up in VisTitle's subtitle editor. I could edit the subtitles in Acon or I could edit them here. This is where if I had got some subtitles which were overlapping, I would suddenly have problems. Let me just get rid of that one. I'm going to disable that and I'm going to bring in the first file which had overlapping subs. Whack it down there. The bit where I have overlapping subtitles here, it actually repeats the line, which I'm going to have to go fix. So I could fix it in here then just by deleting that and carrying on. But it's nicer to get them fixed in the first place. Anyway, let's come back to this one. What I want to do now is format it so that it looks nice. The simplest way to do that is come down to the timeline area and click this little button which puts you into the various templates and choose one of these templates. Let's go for that one. What's that one look like? Oh, that's green. Now obviously I can see it there, but I've got gubbins all over the place here, so it's easier to just pop up there and have a look. And obviously in VisTitle you can make your own style if you want to. But if you're going to burn them in, you want something that's quite simple and readable. I'm going to go for that. That's now formatted the first one, but it hasn't formatted all the rest. So what you can do to do that is, having then applied that subtitle to this one, click this little button, which then says apply to all. And now all the subtitles will have changed. Now I don't have to use a pre-made thing here. I can come up to the stuff where I've got like the typefaces. So let's change it into impact. I can make it bold. I can change the color, all that kind of gubbins. Having changed it up here, I could just do that and apply it to all. And now they all use that typeface. And they're all centered in the middle of the screen. Now you'll sometimes get to subtitles like this which are a bit long. Ideally that would be in 2 separate lines, so you want to split that up. Some of the things I would like to have in Acon would be, when it's transcribing things, have a maximum line length of say 40 characters. Otherwise I get a line like this and I need to split it up, and actually I haven't found a way currently in VisTitle to do that easily, to split it into 2 different lines. Now there may be a better way of doing it, but getting to a line like that, I think it's too long. I want to split it into 2 lines. Logically, you just hit the enter key and it was split it up into 2 lines. Well, it does that, but it doesn't alter the time code. So now I've got to come in and faff with the time code. Now, it's possible that I'm missing something. So there's an easier way of doing this. But actually, the simplest way I found out of solving this is to look at that. That's line 6. I'd like line 6 to split at gone. I'd like line 5 to change at make. So what I'm going to do is go into Explorer, find those subtitle files. So it's subs 2. And I'm going to right click on it and say open with Notepad. Now Notepad is Windows Simple Text Editor. I could say always open with it or just the once. And here we are. I'm now going to find those lines. You can change and transcribe the whole thing, that one. I'm going to go there and just click enter and make it 2 lines. Let's go to that one, 2 lines. Let's go to this one, 2 lines. I am then going to save it under another name, just so I know what I'm looking for. Let's call it subs 6. So that's now made up a new subtitle file. Dump that one, load up sub 6. There it is, pop it onto the timeline, drag it out. Now what does that look like? Oh, it's made 2 or 3 lines out of it. May sound stupid to do it inside of Notepad, but I found that was the quickest way of doing it. And if I find another way, I'll put it in another video. And of course, inside of Notepad, I can actually go to things like the word Clarke and do a find and replace. Replace that with the proper Clarke, please. Or I could go through and find all the variations of EDIUS and change those. But yeah, I found that's probably the simplest way of splitting it up. And again, it sounds silly. Why can't you do it directly in Acon? But I found I started clicking things here, clicking things there. Actually, that worked quicker. If I find out a better way, I'll put it in another video. But then having gone through and checked them all, I can just save it. And if I export that as a file, those will be burned in, because this is effectively a title. So I can do quite a lot of editing with subtitles in VisTitle. I'll probably do a more in-depth video on using VisTitle Express. For now, let's look at a couple of quick things. So for example, I talked about changing these David Clarkes here inside of Notepad. You can change that kind of thing inside of VisTitle. So I could do that and then move down to where else it says David Clarke and do that. There is actually inside of VisTitle a nice find and replace. So I could say, well, find the word Clarke and replace it with Clarke. But apart from that, I've just got to come through and look at it. And here, yeah, I'm finding it quite hard to actually see it here. Personally, I like using a couple of screens. I'll probably put this whole subtitle editor full screen on one screen so I can see my playback screen properly and see actually what it looks like. But here, I can go through and I can edit it. Now, I could have done the same thing in Acon. Whether you use one or the other is entirely up to you. I'm going to go back to editing in Acon in a second. But yeah, if you just want to burn them in, you set these all up so they look good, then you export the file and burn it in. If you want to edit your subtitles in here but still want to export it as some kind of SLT or something, well, you can come up to here. If you click on the little drop down, you can choose to export in all sorts of different formats. So the default is a text file. Text file with timecode should be the kind of thing that you load into Encore, if you've still got a copy of Encore. Haven't tried it. But anyway, here, if I wanted to do the sort of thing I'd go for YouTube, there we are. I go for SRT, and it would export a VisTitle version of that subtitle after you've edited it. Another option you have got is you can come up to here and say Export to Final Cut Pro XML. what it's actually going to do is make up a whole bunch of VisTitle titles for you. Probably easy to show you. I'm just going to choose this. I'm going to make up a folder. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that XML. So let's go to import FCP XML and bring that thing in. Actually, that goes through and it changes every single line into a VisTitle title. Now, you might want to do that if you find it an easier way of dealing with it if you can't get on with the subtitle editor. The only downside of doing it this way is that you now can't export it as a subtitle. It is literally a bunch of titles on the timeline. Personally, I'd just stick with the subtitle editor, but I thought I'd mention that. Another way of doing this, let's just dump that completely, is to go to the template library, go to subtitles. On the main tab, there's subtitle sets. This is not for actual proper subtitles. These are all different types of pre-made templates. That's not the one you want to go for. You want to go for this, subtitles, which leads you to the same templates that we had inside of VisTitle. And just drag one of those and pop it to the timeline. This creates an empty subtitle file. If you wanted to actually make subtitles without bothering to use the transcode, then you could just do this, double click on it and start typing stuff. Or here you can import the subtitle file. So I'm going to click on this, say import SRT, and it pops up here and you can start editing it. Whether you bring it into the bin and drop it or whether you just come in here, it's entirely up to you. Now, whether you edit the subs in Acon or whether you edit them in EDIUS is entirely up to you. EDIUS has got this nice ability to search and replace stuff, which Acon doesn't have. But actually, I found editing stuff in Acon for me worked out a bit quicker. Looking at this, I don't like the way it cuts lines up in the middle at sometimes. So I'm actually going to do it in a slightly different way. And you might be looking at this and saying, David, you're going bonkers. Surely the whole point of this AI stuff is to save you time. And now you're going to do something which looks longer. I haven't timed doing it both ways, so I don't honestly know. But this is another option that you can look at. I'm going to clear the subtitles just by clicking on that. So that gets rid of all the subtitles. Now I've got none. I want to do a whole sentence of stuff. So let's just listen to it. Hello, it's David Clarke here from DVC Training, and I'm just recording. Hello, it's David Clarke from DVC Training. I'm going to shade that bit in. Hello, it's David Clarke here from DVC. Oh, that's not it. That goes up to about there. Hello, it's David Clarke here from DVC Training. You might notice sometimes it only shades in one side, sometimes it shades in both. It's literally sort of where you've roughly dropped the mouse cursor. And actually, for the subtitles, it doesn't really matter. Because if I just shade in the left or shade in the right, it still does the subtitles. But it's just whether you're trying to work on the left channel or the right channel or both. But anyway, I've chosen that. Hello, it's David Clarke here from DVC Training. I want that to be the first subtitle. So I've chosen the actual line I want. And then I'm going to click this button. And that transcribes just that line. Press the subtitle play button. Hello, it's David Clarke here from DVC Training. Hello, it's David Clarke. Happy with that? I'm just going to change the Clarke. Next, I'm going to go on to the next bit, which I'm guessing is roughly there. Bosh. And I'm just recording this little bit of... And then that next bit. And the difference here is that I'm choosing the bits that I want subtitles for. So I can make sure it makes a nice sort of line on the subtitle. Audio, so that I have something to... So I guessed that would be a good place to stop, and it wasn't. Let's just listen. Transcribe in... Yep, transcribe. It would be nicer if that actually went to transcribe. Let me just unlock it, pull that out over transcribe, click the button again. Yep, that's it, transcribe. This looks like another good phrase. Click the button inside of Acon. Go to the next one. Bosh. That way I can actually show you things like, and just move on, choosing the bits that I want to transcribe. How you can make subtitles out of it. Now that looks like it's slightly more tedious, but on the other hand, I know that I've done a line and it's done. It's a nice length of line, and then I can go on and do the next one. Entirely up to you how you do it. When I'm doing stuff for YouTube, my videos are really quite long. I don't know if I've got the patience to go through the entire thing and do this, so I'd probably let it do automatic, sort out the overlapping bits, and then just whack it up there and cope with the fact that some of it's wrong. If I was being paid to do subtitles by somebody, I'd like to make nice subtitles that fit phrases, so I'd probably do it this way. When you're editing these things, you might notice I edited the first one, and I think I put the E on, but it's not there. Now you might think, to edit it, you've got to unlock it. No. The unlocking is only for changing the length. If you want to edit it, all you've got to do is select it, come over here and type something. But having typed something, don't just click the next one, because it'll forget what you typed. Having typed something, click apply, and then it remembers it, and then you can go on to the next one. Now, having done that, I can then export it as a subtitle file and bring it into EDIUS. You might notice that when I'm exporting, there's also the option to export things with color codes. What's that all about? I haven't been doing anything to do with the actor. I mean, part of that is that it's all me, so I don't need to put in different actors. But imagine this was a conversation between a couple of people. You might actually want to have different colors for different people. You might actually want to tag it saying this is David and this is Fred. All you've got to do here is just type in the name of the actor, and there we are. It's now called that one David. It's coloured me red. I could colour me something else. Come to the second one. Let's imagine the second one was Fred. I can type in Fred. And again, if I don't like the red, I could do something else. Third one. Now I've got David and Fred. I can come in and put in David and Fred if I want to. Going off to YouTube, these colours would be totally irrelevant. In fact, going to YouTube, you're much better off just to make a very, very simple SRT file with nothing in it. But going off to EDIUS, you might find this useful. Not to do with subtitles, because let me just do a subtitle with color codes. Pop that into EDIUS and whack it on the timeline. Hello, it's David Clarke here from DVC Training. With my color codes on, suddenly I've got some gubbins at the front. That, if you don't recognize it, is HTML codes for color. And obviously I don't want that, because I'm going to get this gibberish in here, which I literally don't want for my subtitles. But it's very useful for something else that you can do. You can transcode something and then export markers. So let me pop into my other file, which is a bit bigger. Lots and lots of stuff in here. Haven't tweaked it. There's things that are wrong. But yeah, it's fairly accurate. Let's color code some of them. Well, that one can be David. And that one can be Fred. And, you know, I can come through and tell everybody who's who and so on. Now I'm going to export that. And instead of using a subrit with color, I'm going to go to EDIUS marker file. Load up the color codes marker file, and it puts in a whole bunch of markers on the timeline. And you'll notice some of them have got different colors on them. The ones that I actually color coded have got different colors. Now, this is a nice thing that I do like, is the fact that I can take anything, I take a bit of sound and transcribe it, and then it'll create for me a marker list with all the words in it. I can look through my list of markers here and find a particular sentence. At the moment, I've put them onto a timeline. But of course, I could just load that clip up into the clip monitor. In the player, this becomes clip markers, and I can import them onto the clip itself. And now I can say, well, I need to go to this link. What I'm talking about, that's what I want. Double click on that one. It takes me to that point. What I'd really love now is a way of searching through these markers so you can actually just look for a particular phrase. Now, of course, I've done this on a sound file, but having made these markers, I could load them up onto a video file. Also, when it comes to markers, it is actually possible to go the other way. So imagine you do have a long sequence like this. Let's clear off the markers. Select the lot and delete. And I want to put a couple of markers in to do various things. So, you know, I might be trying to do stuff inside of EDIUS to clean this up. And I want to use Acon to do it because Acon's got more tools. Then what I would do is have my timeline laid out and export the whole sound as a WAV file, fiddle with it in Acon, and then bring it back in again. Nice thing is you can shove these markers on here, go to export. Here, you've got to make sure instead of using time code, you've got to change it to milliseconds because it doesn't get time code. So change it to milliseconds, give it a name and save it. Then come back into Acon and find the region list. Now, if you're in your caption editing workshop, it's not there. So you can come up to view and find the region list and say import it, or you can just change it back to a different layout like this one. And there you can see the label list. Right click, import from file, choose your markers. And now those markers have come in on the timeline, so I can see the bits that I've marked out in EDIUS and do stuff in here. So when you've got the audio in here, you know what to do with different bits. So the final thing I wanted to mention is, why does right clicking and open not go straight into Accoustica, just like it does in the demonstration on EDIUS.net. It's fairly simple. This open thing, this has been in EDIUS for years. What it does is you select a file and you click open, it will go to whatever program Windows thinks is the default player or the default thing for that type of file. So, for example, if I go to this file and then open, it opens in Accoustica. If I go to this file and then say open, it opens in VLC. And that is because this is a WAV file, and this is a different type of WAV file, which is a Sony Wave 64 file. So it's basically a WAV file, but a slightly more advanced version. And it just so happens that those are associated directly with Acon and WAVs aren't. Now to change that, you don't do anything inside of EDIUS or Acon, you've got to do it inside of Windows. So let me pop into here and let me find the WAV file, that one there. Now you can see it's got a little cone on it because I have told it to be opened inside of VLC. Whenever I double click on a WAV file in Windows, it opens in VLC. I can change that. What you do is you right click and you say open with. Now here's a list of the stuff it knows already. Some of this is stuff I've added into this computer, or I can go to choose another app. Now Acoustica's already there. So imagine it wasn't, imagine you hadn't done it. How would you set it up? Well, you go to open with, choose another app. If your app isn't listed, you come down here and you say choose an app on your computer, and you find the app on your computer. So in my case, I'd go to Acon, Accoustica, and that. And go open, and now it's going to open that WAV file with Accoustica. This is Windows 11, so it has always or just once. Windows 10 has something slightly different, but it's pretty obvious. Just once means only open it once. Always means, right, every time you click on a WAV file, open it with Accoustica mush. So you can see that's opened it. And if you go back into my little folder here, it's now got a little Acon-y thing on it, telling me every time I open that, it's going to open Accoustica. But the only problem is that it means that every single time you click on a WAV file, it will open Accoustica. Now, a lot of time you might just click on a WAV file because you want to listen to it, which is why mine goes to VLC or Media Player or something else. So I don't want to associate my WAV files with Accoustica. On the other hand, the only time you're probably going to use W64 files is when you're editing with EDIUS, so they get automatically associated with Accoustica. So, suppose you have a piece of video like this. This is my original EDIUS tutorial, and maybe I want to transcribe that. This is the final made AVI file. I can't take that into Accoustica. So what I got to do is to export it as something else. I'm going to come to printer file. Got a whole bunch of options here. I could do a regular WAV file, but instead do that, and it will make up that as a 64-bit WAV file. Once it's actually made that up, just right click, add it to the bin. And now your choice is either to put it underneath. So now you've effectively got two copies of this, the original and the other one. Turn off the original, use the other one, and then when you right click on it and say open, it'll open straight away in Acon. Or you could just delete the original. So let's turn off linking, delete that sound, put this new sound in here. Probably link the two together, and now you see you've got that and that piece of video and a separate piece of audio, but now the audio is that WAV file which you can do stuff to in Acon. What could I possibly do to that? Let's come in here and use some of Acon's normalizing, DS it, whatever, do a bit of processing, then as soon as you save it here, it will be updated inside of EDIUS. So you come back into EDIUS. You notice EDIUS is now remaking the waveform for this file because this file has been changed in another program. Posh, there we are. It's been normalized in a different way. It's actually made it quiet. But there we are. That's now been tweaked in another program and updated here. And of course, because I linked those two things together, they'll move with each other. Now, I did it on a huge file. You could obviously do it one line at a time if you're going to look at individual bits of dialogue or whatever and fiddle with them. I mean, if you had an AVI file and you want to tweak it in Accoustica, then you do have to save the sound as a WAV file. It won't do it directly on the AVI file, which is pretty much like all audio editing programs. So I would have to make a WAV file. So if you're doing that, I would definitely suggest make a Sonic Foundry 64-bit WAV file, and then you can go directly from EDIUS to Accoustica and then back. As soon as you set the link up, you don't have to keep exporting and importing. If I wanted to go back and change something with this now, I'll close Accoustica. This is the one I've adjusted, but let me adjust it again. Select it and go open. Brings it up in Accoustica again. It's a big file, so it takes a little bit of time to draw the waveform, and now I can start Acousticaing stuff in it. Now that Open thing works exactly the same for every type of file. So if I click on the movie file and do that, it's going to open up that movie file in whatever my default thing for opening movie files is, which in this case happens to be Media Player Classic. Final thing worth mentioning is comparing how Acon works to other programs. So I do have other programs that can transcode stuff with AI, notably Resolve, which I have been using up to now, and also Premiere. There's also a free program called Subtitle Edit that I've been recommended to use, but I haven't tried yet. I have to admit, I think Resolve does a better job. It gets slightly more accurate titles. If I look at this one, for example, let's just open that up. Here you can see its transcription for my multiple timeline things. Now it still hasn't spelled David Clarke correctly. It's got EDIUS wrong, but it has got this ability to split everything up into 2 lines, which is actually rather useful when you get really long lines that don't fit. And I think it is slightly more accurate and it doesn't overlap timecodes. On the other hand, you only get that if you've bought the studio version of Resolve. Premiere's pretty similar, does actually a pretty good job. Of course, they've both been doing it a lot longer than Acon has, so let's hope Acon improve their subtitling thingy-bob. And of course, for both of them, you have to pay for it. Subtitle Edit, I say I haven't tried, and it is free. And I've been told it actually does a fairly good job, probably not as good as the 2 paid ones, but you could also do it in that. And even though Acon may be not quite as good as Resolve, you know, it's better than having to type things out manually, which is a real pain in the backside. That's one of the reasons I haven't done subtitles on lots of my videos until we had all this lovely AI stuff, was because it is really exceedingly boring trying to type out subtitles yourself. I will be looking into this further. I'll produce an update if there are some changes or improvements in Acon, and I'll look a little bit better into editing the videos inside of VisTitle. But the other major thing that I will do is video on how to make files actually with subtitles inside of them. Because like I say, at the moment, the problem is how do you give people these subtitles? You can burn them in. But I don't like burning in subtitles because a lot of people don't need them, so why should they be facing the subtitles all the time? Now, obviously with EDIUS, you can just burn them in, like I've been saying, using VisTitle. But I want subtitles that people can turn on and off. Now, I know that if you use VLC, if you export a file, like an MP4 file, and you give it a name, and then you put an SRT file next to it with the same name, so like it's called Video 1 and the subtitle is called Video 1, VLC will use those subtitles automatically. Now, inside of VLC, somebody would actually have to choose to turn the subtitles on, but just putting a subtitle file next to an MP4 file means that VLC will play those subtitles with it. Now, when you're giving it to a client, having to explain that to them might be a pain in the neck. But there isn't really an alternative apart from using a different file type. There are free tools out there to do things like make MK5 files with subtitles in, so I will be explaining how to do that in another video. And that kind of isn't specific to EDIUS, that's specific to everything. It's not EDIUS's fault MP4 files can't have subtitles inside of them. So look out for that video sometime in the coming weeks. In the meantime, I hope that's explained to you how to use Acon a bit better to make subtitles inside of EDIUS. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can contact me, David, at dvctraining.co.uk, and obviously visit my website, www.dvctraining.co.uk, where you can find out more about EDIUS and order EDIUS upgrades. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.